Hmm, I didn't think about that part, but as as we reach the ability to be able to do that, wealthy parties and not as wealthy parties, there's gonna be a huge divide that's only gonna get further and further apart because it probably will be a very expensive procedure to make like an optimal baby, and these wealthy parties are going to create these superhumans who are probably going to continue to be wealthy, and as technology advances create even better superhumans, and and then the parties who don't have access to these technologies will be left in the dust, and it would create just a massive divide.
Oliver, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, Shaurya. How are you?
Thanks for
Thanks for
having me
having me
on.
on.
Doing good, man. Yesterday was quite the day, man. We were down at St.
Yeah.
Benedict's. An amazing, amazing wrestling match. It has to be by far, from the entire season, my favorite of them all, just because every single match was down to the wire. You know, every single piece had to come into play for us to win. First one was a tough one. We lost by 3 points. We came out, beat North Brunswick, and third one, we tied with St. Benedict's, ended up losing the match from criteria, but fuck, man, it was an amazing day.
Yeah, no, yesterday was really exciting. I mean, you basically said it all. Like everything was I don't want to say perfect because there's a lot more that could have been done, but I think they were all good matches. They were all winnable, but like I don't know. I mean, we wrestled not as good as we could have, but it was a lot better than like what we put on in like the past week. And all the matches were definitely winnable, especially that St. Benedict's one. Just winning, they won by criteria. I don't even know if that was real. I might have some conspiracy theories about that.
Yeah, dude. Definitely. I think the first one was definitely winnable. Just 3 points there, like one person not getting pinned. It's like that close, right? But yeah, man, you came back and your debut match, 3 pins on the day, man. I mean, you're looking like fresh, man. Like I know you went elite all summer, you've been training hard, and now here you are, sophomore year, looking pretty fucking good.
Yeah, thank you. You know, like when I first hurt my arm during the football season, you know, it was like devastating almost because like I knew it was one of two injuries. I either broke my elbow or had like a UCL tear. The UCL tear would have been much worse. I would have been out for so long. But like in the moment, I knew it was one of those two, and I knew it'd be out for a while. Um, so like when I went to the doctor and I had like the X-ray and everything, I was actually relieved when I found out it was just the elbow break. But I still knew it would be like a long, hard process. But like it started off with the surgery, and that was really like I mean, the surgery itself was fine, but then the just like the days following that were really hard because I was in like a lot of pain, and it was like the beginning of the school year, so like I was just trying to like get into the swing of things, but it kind of took a toll on obviously my athletic life. I couldn't play football, and I knew I was going to miss some of the wrestling season, but also kind of my academics. Like I was MPS 2H at the beginning of the year, and like it was hard. But I like to also make the excuse that it was because I had a giant cast on my arm and it was harder for me to write. That's why I had to drop to 2A. But
Was it your right arm or your right-handed or?
yeah, it was my right arm. I wrote with my right hand, and like a quiz or something that would take everyone else like 20 minutes. It'd take me 30 or 40 just because like I just slow down and write everything.
Something you wrote was that if something goes wrong, I always tell myself to be looking ahead. What has happened in the past has already happened, and nothing can be done to alter the outcome of the event. I don't believe in bathing in past successes or complaining about past failures or misfortunes. The only productive option is to consider what I can do now to further improve. Now, with this mindset, I mean, obviously it's a very powerful one, right? Because you're not hindered by your past failures and you're only looking about what do I have control over and what do I need to do to get back as soon as possible. But obviously it's not easy when you're faced with this injury and everything in your life is in this gray area where it's like, when am I going to get back? Everything is kind of miserable. Would you say that this mindset is something that's helped you along the entire path of the way, or it's something you kind of learned as you were dealing with the problems and as you saw the progress toward getting better? Did it start to develop over time, or was this a mindset that you kind of carried through and helped you the whole time?
So that mindset I had read about in books from different like Stoics, and things like that. Um, but with this situation is when I was first able to really apply it because because I because this for me was a journey of progress and just making things better. And I know I just said like I was stuck I was stuck with like demotivation and um just not like getting my grades up. Um but when I applied this mindset, I was able to just think to the future about how I was gonna get things done, how I was gonna how I was gonna both get my grades up and improve my condition. I was thinking about when was my next physical therapy session? When could I go to a football or wrestling practice? Maybe not to actually participate, but just to watch and improve. So I would think about things like that in places of being like, oh, I need to feel bad for myself, or like other people should feel bad for me. You try to help me because I'm falling behind. And that's more on the failures part, but like the successes part, um, for me, like going back to yesterday's match, obviously that's like obviously that was a fun day for me. I think I did pretty well. Um, but it's not very productive to especially with matches like that where they were kind of quick and not much happened. I think it's more productive for me instead of like being, oh, I'm such a great wrestler. Oh, I should bathe in this. Like I need to be looking I need to be looking forward about how I can just go and get better. Because if I stay back in those successes, I'm just not gonna improve. Like I can watch film all I want. That's productive in the short term, but you always need to be looking ahead, no matter success or failure.
Yeah, when you're speaking about this, it reminds me of something Coach Frank said last night that really stuck with me about how in this sport you'll feel all sides of the extremeness of it. Like one day you'll be feeling like I'm on top of the world. Another day you'll be feeling like, wow, I'm a failure, right? And I feel like when he said it, it really resonated because I feel like this week has been an example of that. Because there have been times this week where I felt like I feel amazing, and there have been times this week where I feel like I'm shit. And I feel like I mean we both kind of had similar experiences this week where we've had matches where we've done really well. We've had matches where it's kind of gotten not so well. So how would you describe that extremeness of it? Like, have there been moments where it's felt like, wow, this feels amazing, and moments where it's been, wow, this sucks?
Jeez, so wrestling for me, I'm pretty. I don't like to think of myself as sensitive, but when it comes to sports, but more wrestling specifically, because it's so one on one, that for me, I can feel so many different emotions. Like yesterday, I felt like the king of the world because I just kept pinning kids in the first period. I vividly remember a day. I think it was it was my first ever varsity match on my eighth grade middle school team, and I got pinned in front of the home crowd, and my parents were there, my grandparents were there, and that's like the worst feeling. I remember I walked off the mat, I like threw my headgear at the wall, and obviously my coach is really mad at me for that, and my parents are mad at me too. I was mad at myself because I knew like or at least I was telling myself, oh, I could have done so much more, and but I think like that's so important to have both those highs and those lows because for me it makes me want to stick with the sport because I know that even at a lowest low like that, there's going to be some point in my season where I'm going to feel another high, and that's just going to keep me motivated to keep coming back to it, to keep going at it because like if I didn't think that there were those emotional extremes and I was just going to keep being upset, then I wouldn't stick with the sport. Like I wouldn't do something that I don't enjoy doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the story you bring up about that time in eighth grade. Would you say that it's felt the same then and now in terms of those extremes? Has it gotten better with time, or would you say like even a week like this week, like for example, you come back after a long injury, which is a very emotional period, right? You come back and that first match didn't exactly go as you wanted to go, like not from yesterday, but from Wednesday, and then you come back and you won big yesterday. Would you still say those emotional extremes kind of stay similar to how they've always been, or has it been more manageable with time? Or
So the difference there is I think what I feel is the same. It's always been the same, and I don't think it's really going to change. I think what has changed is I've matured since eighth grade. I was like 13. And like the way I've been able to handle myself has improved a ton. So obviously, when I go out and get pinned in front of a home crowd on Wednesday, that's still like crushing. I'm still really upset about that, but I don't have a temper tantrum about it like I did in eighth grade. Um, and and yesterday, I'm really happy with myself, but I'm not like celebrating on the mat, which is also something that I did do in eighth grade, and my coach did get mad at me for that. So inside, my emotions are the same. I still feel the same, like soul crushing, like I just lost in front of everybody I know, all my friends, and I feel the same. Oh my God, this is incredible. I just won in front of everybody I know. The only thing that's changed is my maturity and how I'm able to handle expressing those emotions.
yeah, and I think it's important to strike that balance, even on a personal level, right? Now, obviously, we know that celebrating and acting angry after a match, like that's something we improve with time. And now that you're sophomore in high school, like it's probably not something you'll ever do. But still, when you go back to your home or your room and you're contemplating on those losses, it's very easy to beat yourself up over it. But it's also like when you win a match, you don't want to celebrate it too much, but you also want to be happy with yourself. Otherwise, when are you ever going to be happy with yourself if you're not like rewarding yourself along the way for moments that you should receive those rewards, right? And I think striking that balance between not going so extreme on the emotional side, but also being able to manage them and being able to respond to those emotions is very like a skill that's very difficult to develop with time. But yeah, let's move to something else you mentioned in your when we were talking earlier was the gratitude for life that you felt after hearing some pretty extreme stories of the past, right? Now, I definitely want to get into that story, but now that we're still on the topic of wrestling, how would you say like has wrestling ever been correlated with that piece as well, with the gratitude for life or of being alive right now and today? Would you say there's a connection between those two as well, or
So I keep coming back to it, but the gratitude that I have for life as well as just my physical ability to wrestle now has been amplified by my injury. I spent so much time on the sidelines watching other people do what I wanted to do. Even if they were getting pinned, I still wanted to be out there. But now that I'm back, the second I stepped back onto the mat, the second I went live again for the first time, I I was so happy. I felt so thankful just to be able to do what I loved, which is wrestling. I was so happy that the school provides it for me. I was so grateful for that. I was so grateful just to no longer be in the same state I was a few months ago. Um, and when I first got that feeling in my mind, it was almost deja vu because the same thing happened to me after after COVID. So I started wrestling in sixth grade, and then COVID hit, and there was no wrestling season when I was in seventh grade, and then eighth grade again. I got to come back, and my very first practice in eighth grade, like something inside of me, I was just like, wow, like I'm here. I forgot how much fun this was, but I love doing this. And that's just on wrestling, but that really applies to me for like everything in life, especially with COVID. Coming back to school after that was so eye-opening because before then I just taken all that for granted. I'd taken my ability to go outside and see my friends, taken for granted my ability to wrestle, go to school. But after COVID and my injury and everything, all this when I'm put back into it after being taken out, it's you just develop a feeling of like, wow, I'm so thankful for this opportunity.
Yeah, it seems to me that you're describing like you need some constraint in order to really enjoy what's in front of you, right? That you may have started wrestling and you've been doing it for a couple of years, but from when it was taken away from you and then given back to you, like from COVID or from your injury, then you really can strike that difference and see that how amazing it really is. But what other pieces of wrestling do you really enjoy? Like what keeps you coming back every time in the room? Like what are the pieces of wrestling that you think you come back to the most?
To me, especially at Petty, the sense of brotherhood that we have on the wrestling team is something that really keeps me there. If it was like a toxic mentality from everyone, I there's just no way I would love the sport. Well, there's no way I love the team as much as I do, obviously. And then over time, I feel that would deteriorate my love for the sport. And I feel that happening to me with football. The football team is the team culture is not what we have on the wrestling team. No other sport has what we have. Um, and with football, I love the sport. I love watching it. I love playing it. Um, but just the people that are there, it's it's making me like not. I don't want to say that I don't want to play football anymore, but it's like it's discouraging me from giving football everything that I can. And it's not any individual person per se. Everyone on the team is super nice, but it's just the mentality of football. It's like super competitive. Even just within one team, everyone's trying to best each other for like a starting spot. Wrestling, wrestling is different. Everyone cares for each other. Everyone is trying to make each other better instead of prove that you're better than someone else. And I don't think I'm gonna quit football because just because of like the team culture. The coaching is great. Individually, the people are great. It's just a different environment, and wrestling is something special. Like those people, coach says it before every match. Like we bleed for our brothers, we fight for them, and that's just not something you see in any like in any sport, but let alone just like in life, you don't really see that type of bond in many other places.
Yeah, I think it's because maybe that it attracts a certain type of person, right? It's not per se that magically football has these people and wrestling has these people, but I think the sport itself, like what it requires of you, what it makes you do on a day-to-day basis, it's inevitable that I feel like you will develop that with a team like wrestling. Would you compare that to like maybe that sleepaway camps you talk about, right? You mentioned that the people that you were going to these sleepaway camps with, right? You felt like there was another sense of brotherhood there, similar to maybe what you feel on the wrestling team. Would you say they're pretty similar, or what would you say is like the maybe the reason for why the brotherhood in your sleepaway camp is so strong? And maybe you can even start with like a little overview of the whole sleepaway camp in general and what that's meant for you.
So from the time I was a rising fifth grader up until last summer I did not go. Summer before that I did go. So from then until then, I would go to the sleepaway camp for just a month every summer. It's up in the Poconos. We would stay in cabins. There were like 12 boys and then two counselors. It was an all boys camp. There was like a sister camp down the road owned by the same people for all girls. But staying in isolation, basically, with those people, it like wrestling creates a bond that you don't find in many places. There's no there's no electronics. We don't have our phones to like distract ourselves. The only thing we have is each other. And every day we would go and play sports together. We would eat together every single day. And like with them, I would do things that I would never do normally. I learned how to fish. I learned how to build a shelter out in like the woods. I know how to start a fire. Um, And without these people, without these boys by my side, like I would have never done these things. And like compounding on that, doing these hard things with these people, staying in a nasty cabin. Because let's be honest, if it's a bunch of like 13 and 14-year-olds in a bunk, basically unsupervised, because the counselors were also like teenagers, like it's gonna get pretty rough. But it's in those rough moments where like you're living with these people. Like there's no way you don't form a brotherly bond with them. And like the camp slogan, I think it's been a while, but it's like brothers bound in blue. Blue is the camp color. But everyone there, there's like 300 campers there every year. Everyone there knows each other pretty well, but then it's really within the bunk, these 11 other kids that I stayed with every summer. And it's the same kids every summer because they don't split you up. But just going through all these hard things with them, trying these new things with them, competing against the other cabins and like whatever stupid game we would play, it it's almost identical to wrestling in the way that you're going through what I like to argue is the hardest sport with these people, and it's the same people every time. There might be new kids here and then, but like for the most part, it's your teammates and they're permanent for at least the 4 years that they're at high school. But the two to me are directly parallel in the way that, you know, like trauma bonding. You go through hard things together, and that forms a very special relationship that isn't out there in the world apart from places like this.
Yeah, dude, I've heard so much about sleepaway camps, and so many people come and tell me how sleepaway camps have been like one of their best experiences in the world. And I personally have never been on one, but the more and more I hear about them, the more and more it's like that sounds so cool. Because when you're there, you're just in such a primal state, right? You're away from all modern shit like phones and computers and everything. And I do like to think that we are happiest when we're in those primal states. You know, in the nature, like with a group of boys just in a cabin. And obviously there's ways I've been thinking about how can I integrate that in a day-to-day life, like spending more time outside, using my phone less. But obviously it's nothing like just being over there, right? On a sleepaway camp. But yeah, dude, it sounds super cool to me. So what are some of the best parts you've had over there? Like some of the best memories you've had?
So the first thing that pops into my mind, we the camp is called Lake Owego, so there's a lake there. Um, and there's this thing called a Whibbit. It's like a giant inflatable obstacle course that's just on the middle of a lake. And the goal of it normally is to like just run and complete the obstacle course without falling in the water. But it's a bunch of boys, so we're gonna like wrestle each other and we're gonna like tackle each other off the Whibbit. Um, those those times we didn't go on often because everyone wanted to go on, so it had to be like scheduled out. But when we did, that is when the bond was the strongest. Because to a bunch of 12-year-olds, when you're pushing each other off the giant inflatable tower, we would team up as bunks. So the people that I would live with for this month, we'd be like an army squadron against the other teams, and we would almost king of the hill, like run up to the top and just defend it from the other people. And it sounds stupid, but to 12-year-old me, this was like these kids have my back and I have theirs. And yeah, I mean, we were brothers more closely in any other moment than any other moment than on the Whibbit.
That's cool, man. So the lake was like huge, I'm assuming, right? So this is like a pretty big. How long did it take the obstacle course to finish? Like, was it small or like?
Oh, it was pretty small. Most of the kids there were like athletes because we were out playing sports like basically 24/7. Take you like 30 seconds to complete. So when they first let us out into the lake, it would be just like the first bunk that could get to the end of it and then basically defend their position from the other attacking bunks. And it sounds almost like sounds almost like a war, but again, to like a bunch of 6th and 7th graders, that's what it was.
So, what did your typical day look like at the camps? Like, what time did you wake up? Like, what would you do during the day?
So there's two different groups, and I was in both of them. At my time there, there's juniors, which is I want to say 6th grade and under, and then seniors, which is just um 7th and up. Um, and the schedules would be different for them for the most part, but breakfast was always at the same time. I think we'd get up at it's pretty early. It would be like 7:30. We would go eat breakfast. It wasn't always great, but camp food is camp food. Like you can't expect to have 5 star.
What'd you guys get?
Um, so it was a Jewish camp, and like I'm Jewish, but I don't eat kosher. I'm not super religious. Um, it was a bunch of kosher food, which means we never got like bacon in the morning, which is something that I would look forward to at home a bunch. There was a bunch of prepackaged like waffles. It wasn't great, but even in just the dining hall, you would sit with your cabin at these long tables. Um, so then after breakfast, you would go back for inspection, which was every single morning we had we had to clean the bunk spotless, and it almost sounds like prison in a way because we're forced to, but and that's what it felt like when I was a little kid, and I did not want to sweep and mop and make my bed and like do the laundry every morning. But now that I look back on it, like it taught me like life skills. Like I have to be responsible for myself, and we'd have a job wheel that would get spun every morning. So like some kids would land on like a waiter, so they would before meals they would go to the dining hall early and they would set out silverware and water and cups. Yeah, some kids would be forced, not forced to. I mean, yeah, forced to, but that sounds bad. Some kids would mop and sweep. And then one of like they were called unit leaders. They were like counselors who had been there for a while. They just had more like authority. They would come around and it's called inspection, so they would inspect the bunk for like dirt or messes. And it was pretty like it was pretty motivating to get all this done as best as we could because up in the middle of like the camp square there would be a board and every single day there would be a rank, there would be a list of bunks from cleanest to dirtiest, and if you didn't clean properly you wouldn't be allowed to go and like play sports. So then after inspection the juniors they go to first period lineup. um so they would go out and sit in a field with a bunch of counselors, and all the counselors ran different things. There's archery, there's football, basketball, fishing. I think there was riflery, which was not a great idea to hand to little kids. But but
It's like what type of like an actual rifle or like what was this like?
so it wouldn't be like a military like assault rifle, but they were like bolt action like hunting rifles. So they were like single action, like you had to put a new round in each time you shot. But that was still fun. I felt like a badass doing it when I was 11, 12. Yeah, so for these little kids, the counselors would pitch their activity to them every single morning, and they would pick a new one every single morning. And then it'd be the same for second period and third period, and then there'd be lunch, and then there'd be fourth, fifth, and sixth period. And it would be the same thing throughout. So the little kids got to pick new activities every single period, every single day. Um, lunch, lunch and dinner were usually like same structure as breakfast. The waiters would go early, set out everything. Um, food food was better for lunch and dinner, but still not great. And then everyone after dinner, we called it shower hour. So we went back and showered, and then there'd be like free time around camp where you could go do like arts and crafts or just like fish, because like this was around the time where the sun would be setting, and it'd be pretty nice just go out in the lake and just chill. And then and then there would be an evening activity, which was usually some huge game with the entire age group. So some of the ones that I remember best would be like capture the flag, but like 100 kids on each team. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, and then the seniors, the like 13-year-olds and up, they would follow the same schedule, like with the periods and everything. They also had to do inspection, but instead of getting ideas pitched to them every morning and picking new activities every day, at the beginning of the week there would be a sign up for each period. So you would just go find someone who had something you wanted to do during first period, have them write your name down, go to someone for second period. That was always like competitive because everyone, like I said, everyone wanted to get on the lake for the Whibbit. So everyone would rush to that to get their like first period. You have to be really fast to get that. So that was yes, yeah. So we would set our schedules for the week, and then it was usually more efficient because instead of having to go listen to all the counselors tell us to come join their activity every single period, we could just go straight to the thing we wanted to do. And a lot of the times, like I said, these counselors are just teenagers. They weren't really strict, so if for whatever reason I really did not like I really was not feeling football like at 8 a.m. and I really didn't want to, I was just tired. I could usually bring my fishing rod and go down to the lake, and the fishing counselor would let me just fish instead. But yeah, that's usually how a typical day went.
So would you say some of the practices you were doing at the camp, like the morning room inspection, like cleaning everything up, would you say like some of these you've carried over and you still kind of do? Like, do you still try to keep your room clean and everything, or is that one thing you keep doing? Or
So yeah, definitely the inspection part has carried over. Um, and like I said, looking back on it now, it was to teach us those life skills of just staying organized in order to be as productive as possible. And before I went to camp and even the first few years that I did go there, like my room was pretty messy. I kept it a mess. But then as I started to realize what inspection was teaching me, I would come back home and I would get mad. I would get like some sort of OCD feeling in my head, like my room has to be clean, otherwise I won't be able to be as productive as I can. Yeah.
yeah, I think having a clean room is so important. Like I know that when my room is messy, it's just like it's horrible, right? Just from my mental state, I feel like your internal state matches your external state, and if your desk is a mess, like your mind is going to be a mess too. But still, I think cleaning my room, I like to think I keep it pretty clean, but I do get lazy with it. Like I will delay it. Like out of all the things, like that is something I continue to delay. That I'll keep pushing it back, right? But I do definitely think it's really important one for sure.
Yeah, I often find that I've strayed a little bit away from the inspection every morning schedule that we did at camp. Um, like there will be some weeks where I'll let whatever mess I have going in my room kind of pile up, but like that would get to my head. I'll I'll set it if I see that a big mess is piling up and it's getting in the way of things I want to do. I'll set aside time to like, okay, I'm gonna fully organize my room. Um, and that helps with so many things. Like if I go to do homework in my room and I see, oh, I have clothes on the floor, I have Amazon boxes opened but not thrown away. Like like I won't be in the right mental state to get things done if that's what my room looks like.
For sure. When I was hearing your story, you told me earlier about your great grandmother, right? In the camps and everything like that. And your key learning about how grateful we are to be living in a time like today. I definitely think that a lot of people, when they think about the modern world, they think it's so deranged, right? They think there's all these problems going on here and there. But I think so many people fail to realize how amazing our present reality is. Like the things that we just take for granted every day is so amazing. And the reason I was thinking about that recently is because this book that I just started reading, there was like the beginning chapters of it, which is basically a book about the future, like probably what's going to happen in the future, like some predictions. But the whole beginning of the book talks about different, like our past and like the struggles we face as humanity in the past and how great our present life really is. And it just like maybe reminded me of that. So I was going to read like some segments from here. um, this is, by the way, Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. The same three problems preoccupied the people of 20th century China, of medieval India, and of ancient Egypt. Famine, plague, and war were always at the top of the list. For generation after generation, humans have prayed to every god, angel, and saint, and have invented countless tools, institutions, and social systems, but they continue to die in their millions from starvations, epidemics, and violence. Many thinkers and prophets concluded that famine, plague, and war must be an integral part of God's cosmic plan or of our imperfect nature, and nothing short of the end of time would free us from them. So these three things, like famine, plague, and war, that I've just like heard some of the numbers of this. So I'm gonna pull up this. There was some things down here. So one of the quotes I heard is that sugar is more dangerous than gunpowder today. 1.5 million people have died from diabetes in 2012 and 620,000 from human violence. Like the amount, it's like decreased over time. If you look at like the past, like millions and millions of people dying, 1 in 3 children usually just die before they even reach adulthood just because of the lack of medicine we had, right? Today, people are more at danger of dying from binging at McDonald's than dying from starvation, which is huge because in the past, the when people would be hit with famines and plagues, they wouldn't really know like what to do about it, right? The concept of a disease, right, of a plague, we know about how it works right now. We know there's bacteria and viruses, but for someone who doesn't know what a bacteria and virus are, and they just see that all of a sudden the Black Death hits and like half of the people around you are just dead, it's so confusing, and they would probably think it's like bad air or God or something. But really, the what this book has shown me is that there's so much to be grateful for being alive today, and talk to me through like the story that helped you realize that as well, right? With your great grandmother.
Yeah. So my great grandmother was born in Poland in 1925. Um, she was Jewish. Her whole family was Jewish, and then the Nazis and the Soviets attacked. And the Soviets came to her home, and I think it was in 1940, sent her and her family out to Siberia, which is like an excruciating place to be. And there, she was sent to live on this farm that was owned by this Russian, um, and it was forced labor every single day. Um, and in a split second, her entire life was ripped away from her. She was at home, like I don't know what she was doing, but she was probably chilling. And then like news wouldn't spread as fast, so she might not have even known that this was something that was going on. And Soviet soldiers come to her door and sent her thousands of miles away from her home in Poland. And like I don't want to sound ignorant. We obviously there are problems in this modern day. There are so many issues, so many atrocities committed by so many people, but we're so lucky on so many different levels. Um, ever everyone living in this modern day is lucky. We like things like that, things like being ripped away from your home. Obviously, that still happens to a lot of people, but with heightened technologies and communication and heightened like defense technologies and governments, that it obviously happens, not at the same rate. We're lucky on the level of living in America, like this developed country where especially things like that don't happen. Our government is very protective and for the most part stable. Um, like there's I don't I can't even imagine a situation where our country is invaded and we're sent away to work somewhere. And more specifically, more personally, on this, just on the school level, let's face it, everyone here is definitely pretty loaded. I don't say loaded, but like like everyone here has money.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. Um, everyone here is in a situation or is not in a situation where they're where they're wondering where the next meal is going to come from. Everyone here has enough money to get by because that's just the nature of a private school, especially a boarding school. Um, and to me, a lot of people here don't really take the time to consider um a lot of the issues going on in the world or the issues that went on in the world in the past. They're complacent and living in their own in their wealth and comfortability. And I think it's important to consider and to be grateful for just being able to trust in the stability of any systems or communities that you're a part of.
Yeah. I don't want to discount like modern day problems, right? I think people for sure there are still major problems that exist in the world today. I mean, if you look at some of the ongoing wars, obviously those are pretty harsh, but even for people that are living in quite well-established societies, like obviously there are other problems that they're facing, whether it's mental health problems, etc. But I do want to just put into perspective that what we're going through right now is nothing compared to some of the atrocities of the past. And you know, one while this mass communication and media has been a huge benefit to us, one of the disadvantages is that we always think like there's something bad happening, right? I heard a quote recently that if you think the world is deranged, it's probably because of something you saw on your computer than something you saw in the real world, right? I think the internet combines all of the worst and worst of everything happening around the world and puts it in one place, and you know everything. Like, would someone in 1600 Spain know what's happening in like Argentina? Like, probably not, right? The truth is that if you didn't have your computer or your phone or news, you would think the world is quite a beautiful place. And the only reason we think the world is so deranged is because everything we hear on the news gets hyper. I don't know the right word for this. It's blowing up a little bit. It's
Inflated?
that's the
That's the
word,
word.
inflated,
Inflated.
right?
Right.
And on top of that, war is at an all-time low, and I think the reason for that is because war is just no longer an advantage to countries anymore, right? I think this for 100 different reasons, right? I think that in some places where you can obtain material assets, it's a huge benefit, right? And there's some ongoing wars where one country is literally taking over another country just because that through that they can take advantage of like agriculture and crops in some of the lesser developed countries. But China is not going to have any benefit invading California, like Silicon Valley, and stealing their silicons or something like that. But because knowledge, I think in most developed countries, knowledge is more powerful than material assets, right? Which is why that America and China, there would benefit more if they collaborated with each other in terms of a technological front than fighting with each other, because that wouldn't bring them anything. And with nukes, it's pretty much a suicide if you're asking for war. So, if we look at the past, when people, even like not recent past, but far, far back, when people used to live more like agricultural societies, like thousands of years ago, in their societies, like their day to day was literally just fighting, right? That you're holding on to like your group of like 50, 100 people in your tribe are holding on to like this crop field, and the people over there might come and kill you all and take your woman and like take all your crops like tomorrow, right? You're living in constant violence, and there's so much to be grateful for about just being alive today, you know?
Yeah, like you were saying, there isn't really, to me, I think, much benefit in the modern day of countries going to war because with modern offensive technologies, it would just be a net negative for everyone involved. Like you were saying, in like Paleolithic, like hunter-gatherer societies, the worst that's going to happen is the only people that are getting hurt are the people actively participating in whatever raid or conquest like they're going on. Nowadays, in societies like America or China or like societies in Europe, war war isn't often decided by the people living in it. The people who are declaring war are the people in government, but war still affects all those citizens. Like if we were to go to war with China right now, it would be it would be disastrous not just for the militaries, but for citizens here, citizens in China. It there's just and like you were saying, there isn't really much of a material benefit to be had on either side of that. It would only result in unnecessary citizen casualty.
Yeah, and although that I'm happy that everyone kind of realizes now and people are not shooting nukes at each other out of stupidity, I wonder how long we'll be stuck in this zone of, I think people call it the precipice, right? Where we're kind of sitting on the edge where we have the power to end everything right now, but we kind of know that maybe it's not the best idea to be playing around with these things. So I wonder how long that lasts for, right? Because it's very, very recent. A lot of these things, like World War I, World War II, they are very, very recent, right? I think we like to think that it's, everything is perspective wise, right? 30 years can feel like a long time. It could also be nothing if you compare it to like what happened 10,000 years ago, right? And if you think about it like in that perspective, some of the most recent world wars are very, very recent, right? So I'm really wondering like how long we'll really be in the zone of the precipice where everyone's kind of on a standstill. Like I know we're not in a Cold War anymore, but it's kind of can be kind of seen as that because we have technically the powers to end everything, right? And I'm really curious about I'm hoping that we can find solutions to a lot of these problems. I'm hoping that it continues to improve with time in the next 100, 200 years, but it's scary, man, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the only way improvements get made are through mutual agreements and between countries because as it is right now, to me, the tension is so tight, like you could breathe and it would snap. It's scary, really, but I think I trust in our world leaders. Like I don't trust them, but I trust that they're not going to end the world. Um, yeah, it's a scary. It's like we live in a scary time, but again, nothing has happened yet. There's nothing really, at least in America, for us to complain about right now. Like, we can think about the future and we can be pessimistic about it, but as of right now, nothing has happened to really trigger anything.
Yeah, it also goes to make me think about how amazing humanity is. Like it's something that's so hard to understand, but the fact that we've came from like nothing, these like apes and evolved and we've created like these skyscrapers and these bridges and then we've come so far. And when we look back at like human progress over time, that some of the most amazing things that have been built, like some of the churches, and have you seen some of those churches in like Rome and things like that? They're like huge, and there's so many world wonders that have built humans have built. I feel like humans have this innate desire to just progress and make stuff, and it's really interesting how recently like it's kind of transitioned away from like these big churches and big cool things to more like technological advancements and how fast everything is really moving. That like I know I've only read like 70 pages of this book, but there's so much about what could potentially be our future with like genetic engineering. Have you heard about stuff with genetic engineering?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
So you've taken bio, right? You're taking bio, like you're probably learning genes right now because that's what we're doing in AP Bio. But yeah, there as we're learning more and more about genes, we're learning also about genetic modifications we can make, right? How we can potentially do in vitro births, so like out of and I don't know the right term to this, so someone's gonna come and tell me I'm all wrong with my terminology, but I'm trying to bro science this a little bit so it's making sense. So instead of having births like in I don't know what it's called, I think your embryo or in a woman's body, like they can actually like take the sperm and an egg and they can have a birth outside of a human body, right? That's something that's up and coming. But in addition to that, they can edit the genes and they can take the most optimal egg and optimal sperm that will lead to the most optimal baby in terms of phenogenetic traits, right? That they can say, oh wait, I can actually code for this gene and alter this gene to make you a more taller baby, or I can make your baby more intelligent if I mess around with these genes. Obviously, it's not happened yet because we're still like advancing in this area. But as we start to learn more and more that a lot of who you are as a person is genetic, even like your social life, even like your intelligence. A lot of that comes from genetics, even though we like to think that a lot of it is our own doing, right? Which it is. I think the stat is that 60% of who you are is genetic and 40% is like your own self. But since so much of who you are is kind of predetermined by your genetics, the fact that people can be out here editing genes for their babies predeterminedly to have the most optimal baby, that is a huge part of our future because imagine how much parents are paying right now for their kids to be successful, right? Parents are willing to just pay off 70K to send them to Peddie to some private school and give them as much opportunities, buy them coaches and everything so that they have a good life, like pay so much for college. Do you think they would really hesitate when they find out the idea that they can do genetic engineering for their kids and have them like be smarter, even if it will cost like a lot of money? And it could also go into these huge inequality problems where people with a lot of money will start to be more intelligent. People that are poor will not be because of genetic modification. Like it's just crazy how nuanced this gets, but it's absolutely crazy.
Hmm, I didn't think about that part, but as like as we reach the ability to be able to do that, wealthy parties and not as wealthy parties, there's gonna be a huge divide that's only gonna get further and further apart because it probably will be a very expensive procedure to make like an optimal baby, and these wealthy parties are going to create these superhumans who are probably going to continue to be wealthy, and as technology advances create even better superhumans, and then the parties who don't have access to these technologies will be left in the dust, and it would create just a massive divide. And I don't think it's as far off as many people might like believe it to be. I remember reading this story. A bunch of these biologists took DNA from fireflies. They took the DNA that codes for their bioluminescence, and they put it in a pig, and its hooves ended up being able to like glow. So that is the definition of genetic modification. I mean, they fully altered an aspect of a species that would just never be there otherwise. And if we can do it to a pig, like how far are we from being able to do it to people? It doesn't seem that far out. I mean, all these that story points directly to just being able to make like why can't people glow in the dark if a pig can do it? Like
And there's so many ethical concerns that the debates are going to get heated, bro. That people are like, don't do this, don't do that. But in terms of how long it will take, it's a good question because nobody really knows, right? I think we're very bad at predicting. Like I don't know exactly. There's a quote I heard. I don't remember exactly, so I'll totally butcher it. But people in the '90s thought that we'd be. Trying to think here. Even if I mess up the quote a little bit, it'll make sense. So let's do it. People in the '90s thought we'd have flying cars and stuff, but they wouldn't have been able to predict the internet, right? So I think that we may have this like vision of what this future will be, but the vision of the future will also impact our present decisions. And we might go off and something that we would never thought of would just appear. That's like the story of the internet. Nobody knew the internet was coming. It kind of just boomed up, and it's like, holy shit, like we have access to so much information so fast, just so new. But you know, when people are I think another thing that people are trying to do is become immortal, which obviously when I say immortal, I'm not meaning as if like all of a sudden we'd live forever, but slowly I feel like our human progress has been geared toward that front that we've been trying to just expand the life expectancy. Like it's normal to live to 80 now. And if you don't live to 80, it's like that's kind of weird, right? When in the past it's normal to die like 30 or 40. And I think people like to frame it as if we're improving our health. That's how everything all these like modifications of humans have started by us trying to say that we're just trying to improve our health, right? But then when they realize that this can also be applied to non-healthy people to make to make normal people even more healthy, then we can. Sorry, this is not making much sense. Let me use an example. Plastic surgery. Initially, plastic surgery was born because people in World War II, some doctors were trying to figure out how to fix someone's nose, right? And they designed this whole thing that can fix your nose. Then they realized that why are we only using this to cure unhealthy people? We can also use it to cure healthy people. And now plastic surgery is this whole thing that people use for whatever reasons they may want to, right? Let's say they're making a medicine that can help cure someone's dementia, help cure someone's like I think Alzheimer's is the one where you start to forget, or that's yeah, I think it's Alzheimer's, right? And they realize that let's say by the next 50, 60 years they find the cure. And this seems like a noble thing to do, right? Because you're helping with this disease that's ruining a lot of people's lives. But once you realize that, wait, this can help improve the memory of someone who's not healthy. What if you use it for someone who's healthy and help them get like a super memory? And all of a sudden, you're going from helping people with their health to advancing humanity, right? Like making us like superhumans. And slowly, I think that we're trying to create ourselves to be even more superhuman, at the point where it's like, immortality, I think it's far away, but I think more and more it's seen as like a technical problem that if we just solve these things, like what are the causes of death? or you get old age, like we can solve that, and maybe not so easily, but maybe in like 400 years or something like that, they're able to make regenerative tissues and help cure the things in your body that are dying and causing you to die, and then all of a sudden like expand the life expectancy. Now I know I simplify that in a very simple thing, but I don't think it's that far off where we're trying to just advance humanity to such a point, framing in this thing that, oh, we're just trying to improve our health, but ends up helping our upgrade to superhumans at the same time.
Yeah. When it comes to extending life expectancy, I think when you're discussing that, you have to make a separation between immortality, which you could have a whole discussion about, like existentialism and like nihilism. Um, but just extending the life expectancy, there's a lot of good that comes out of that, and also a lot of bad. A lot of good in the fact that people live longer. You get to experience more. Um, I think there would be some sort of exponentiation where if people live longer, we're able to develop more technologies faster and in turn extend more lifespans. But then also there's bad things that come out of it. Like in North Korea, if Kim Jong Un figures out how to live for another 200 years, the people that are there are going to be suffering for so much longer than they already are. And for people like that, it would be for people like Kim Jong Un. That's it's those parties who I think are most likely to gain access to that technology first, because because whatever society develops those technologies, they see the world leaders and governments as most important, and would likely prioritize them to have their like life extended.
Yeah, I like that point you bring up because when a lot of people hear like, "Oh my god, genetic modification," and "Oh my god, like extending the life expectancy," they're kind of like hit the brakes, like let's go a little slower, like it's all happening so fast. But you can't really hit the brakes because if the U.S. says, "Okay, that's kind of ethically wrong, we'll take a step back," then your competitors doing it though. They might be doing it in some other country around the world, and you're gonna fall behind if you don't do it. So you can't really hit the brakes. Like that's what happened with the nukes, right? Everyone's trying to make a nuke because, well, he's gonna have a nuke and I'm not gonna have a nuke. That fair enough. We decide, okay, genetic engineering, maybe it's not so good. Someone else, maybe they're making like superhumans in North Korea right now. Like you don't know that. So we kind of all have to keep advancing. Otherwise, we're all gonna fall behind. And you know, I think the nukes was the first time I think humanity all came together and said maybe we shouldn't do this. I think there was a point where everyone kind of like took it down, like this is not a good idea, right? Before that, everyone's trying to use their new technologies and kill each other with it. But that's like the first time everyone's like, okay, let's take a break here. We don't want to kill everybody.
Recording
Yeah, I
stopped.
think that race to be the one, it's dangerous, man.
I think the nukes, um, I think that is a very different discussion than one of genetic modification, because nukes, is their only purpose is to cause damage. Like they don't assist in really much else. But genetic modification, a lot of people could argue like, oh, we're only doing this to improve quality of life. We're only doing this to improve technology and just the human lifespan. Nukes nukes can only harm people. So when when first world countries see that, wow, everyone's stockpiling all these devices whose only purpose is to end human life, there there had to be some sort of agreement that says like we're not going to use these, because it would be immediately and obviously detrimental to society. It would likely end a lot of societies. Genetic modification, on the other hand, it's not it's not directly harmful to anyone. Like in the long run, it very well may be, but you could you could always come up with some other reason to do it, not just harm people.
Yeah, man, it's funny how we went from saying that, oh, the world's kind of nice and we're living this great time to like all these problems. Like, I still think we're in a good time. And I think that when we talk about these things, we also have to understand that progress is gonna be slow. I think there is this notion that everything is happening fast and everything is happening fast, but we're pretty far off from things like immortality. Like probably further off than we think, right? And again, the things that we think are going to happen are probably not the things that are going to happen, and something new is just going to come out of nowhere, you know? So I think there's also this notion that, we're still living in a pretty good time. And I think we should all be grateful for the things we do have, because there is a lot that a lot of people don't have. And there's always ways you can look at your own life and find things to be grateful for.
Yeah, and I think that brings us back to the idea of the petty bubble of we don't here there's not much for us to worry about. We're so separated not just from not just from bad things that happened in the past that have been improved upon now, but things that are just happening in the present, just not here. Um, yeah, so I just hold the belief that everyone should continue to be grateful for what they have because it can always be worse.
Yeah, man. I mean, even for someone who's going through like a really hard time, I still think there's ways to find gratitude, right? And I think gratitude goes beyond, oh, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my education. Like it goes beyond that. Like you should I think you can find so many things to be grateful for. Like yesterday in the morning, the weather was amazing, right? Like I don't know if you were there, but it was like I had first block off and I was kind of just walking around, like it was slight drizzle and the weather was warm and like there's gray clouds in the sky. Like it felt so good the weather last morning, right? And the wind outside today. Like there's so many like little things in your day to day to be grateful for, you know. And I think spending time I think when I started spending time just doing gratitude, like just journaling about it, like just trying to make a list of things I'm grateful for, and like I think I have like over 1,000 things now, right? There's so many like little things to be grateful for in your day to day. I think when you do that, it starts to make your mind also just generate thoughts of gratitude more naturally. And I think when you do that, you'll just have a more positive state of mind.
And I'd imagine a lot of those things, like yesterday morning's weather, they don't require any wealth. You don't have to have some amount of material earnings just to appreciate that. Anyone can go outside and just be grateful just to be alive and to be able to have the human sensation of feeling the warmth, feeling the light drizzle. So yeah, obviously, like I know people have it much worse than me, and I know people are going through really hard things, but I think it applies to anyone to just appreciate as much as you can, and and in turn that will improve your mindset just about life.
It goes back to one of your other quotes or mindsets about how you value experiences over material. So talk to me more about that. So when you say you value experiences over material possessions, would you say that when you define experiences, what do you really define as experiences? Let's start there.
So to me, an experience in exchange for some material would be just I don't know. I love to travel. So like on like Christmas Day, I'd rather I'd rather get plane tickets than like a new video game or something. To be able to go and appreciate other parts of the world because let's be real, New Jersey's not a very interesting place. But to be able to just go and see that, it doesn't matter where, just any aspect, any part of the world where it's just not like the norm for me to be able to go and appreciate that, even if it's just an experience that doesn't last forever. Whether it be I go outside and I see a view that I only look at for a minute, or I'm on some vacation for a week. I'd rather have that over almost any material possession. I'd rather be able I would rather be able to just go outside and appreciate things around me and appreciate the ability to appreciate those things. Just like be happy about the fact that like I'm human and my time on this earth is limited, but while I'm here I can cherish these moments.
Yeah, and I think the word experience doesn't have to be limited only. Like I think you said this perfectly, right? It doesn't have to be limited to traveling only, right? Traveling is an amazing experience, right? Visiting some of the most beautiful places in the world, whether it's like hiking in Iceland or seeing like the castles in France or whatever it might be, like those are experiences. But I don't know, driving 2 hours up north or 2 hours near to some mountain range nearby, going hiking, there's an experience, going on a run outside right now is an experience. There's so many experiences, like playing an instrument's an experience. But I see this in a lot in modern people. They will always delay experiences to some later date. They will always say that, okay, yeah, I want to have that experience, but I have this thing that's in front of me right now that I have to deal with, whether it be like the job, right? And you say that I don't have time for experiences right now because I'm trying to make enough money. Then I'll have the experiences later. Or it's I'm at Peddie right now and I have to keep doing my schoolwork. I'll wait till when I'm done with my schoolwork to have the experiences, right? People paint this idyllic future of when they finally reach their success, they can enjoy it. That when I finally make enough money, I can enjoy the money. When I finally get far enough in whatever your measure of success is, then I can finally enjoy the success. But I don't think you enjoy the success when you reach the success because success is such a fluid term where that when you make $1,000 you want 2,000, you make 2,000 you want 10,000, and it can be a bad thing if you never enjoy the success along the way, but it could also be a good thing if you're enjoying the process of growing, right? I think improvement is the source of happiness, but you can never if you don't have time for it today, you will never have time for it, right? If you're so busy that you don't have time to play the guitar today because that's an experience you want to have, because you're waiting till you finally make enough money, then you can go play the guitar. And it's like, what's the point of the money in the first place if you could have just done it today, right? Like I feel like people trade happiness today for happiness tomorrow, which never ends up coming. So I love that mindset a lot, and I think I fall into that zone too, where it's like it's winter term, it's petty. Like I have schoolwork, I have wrestling, I have work on the podcast. I don't have time to have experiences, but there's always ways to do it, right? There's always ways to make that time, and you have to make that time today, otherwise you just never get that time.
Yeah, and that's really a mindset that only perpetuates itself, just putting off success until some later date when you think you can be even more successful. And I feel that most clearly applies to something like travel, being able to build up enough funds to be able to go and have some amazing experience out in where wherever you want to go. But there's so many more things that can be appreciated for completely free and completely in the moment. They don't have to be some huge commitment. There are experiences that you can just have, experiences that you can have at home. There are experiences that you can have just by taking a step outside and just being able to appreciate those little things. I think is way more developmental than just than putting off that appreciation until you think that you will be able to appreciate it more. It's more important to me to appreciate things in the now than than thinking like, oh, I'm going to appreciate these things when I'm able to.
Yeah. If you're not happy today, you won't be happy tomorrow, right? If you're thinking that finally one day I'll be happy, you have to if you're working toward a goal, good. If you don't have a lot of money, you're working toward getting more money, that's good. But if you're not happy today, that's a separate problem that I don't have money today. And there's ways I really strongly believe this because I feel like I've really internalized this over the last 4 months. There are ways that you can enjoy the process while working toward the goal at the same time. And I think I heard this mindset recently that this one guy was talking about how he doesn't understand the concept of boredom. That there's literally so much to do in this world. You can go play pool, you can go swimming, you can go archery. Like there's hundreds of things you can do. You can always find people to do it with you. And part of life is just doing things with people you love, right? Doing things you love with people you love. And there's just so many ways you can access that. You can make excuses like I don't have time for it. Or you can just say, I have half a day open on Sunday. Let me call this guy up and let's go swim in the lake together. There's so many experiences you can have that you're not having. And I think I fall victim to it as well. I think we really need to work more toward like making sure we're happy today, right? Because I think you know what you were at chapel, right? That one day, I think from Caitlin Vella's speech, there's one quote I really liked that stuck with me. That I think is like you're born in the morning and you're dead at night. Like your day is your entire life, and if like 50% of your day you're kind of miserable, then you kind of have to fix something, right? You need to find a way that you can really have your whole day filled with activities you love, and I think that I felt that at some points. Like, I think some Sundays, like in fall term, I was probably like the happiest because like I would just fill my day with like so much shit that I enjoyed doing. Like I'd lift in the morning, and then I'd work on the podcast during the day, and I'd go hang out with my friends in the evening. And I kind of fill my day with those activities. You can just make yourself an ideal day. Just make a list of like all the things you enjoy doing, whether it's like hiking or it's like I want to try all this new shit and just do it. There's so much you can do today.
I think I think the concept of boredom is only further amplified today by a lot of social media platforms, especially like TikTok or Instagram Reels. If you go on your phone, it's constant stimulation. Like you're constantly getting new information. You're seeing things that like trigger some dopamine in your brain that like you're always just you're you're always being stimulated, and boredom comes out of that because the second you take that away, your brain's like, what happened? Like, why am I not? Why am I no longer seeing all these colors and hearing all these sounds that I just saw? Um, and like that makes people really uncomfortable. And I'm a victim of this too. When things aren't happening all the time, people get bored and they get uncomfortable. And to me, if you can't be at peace by yourself in your own head, then I don't think you'll ever truly be able to be at peace. You may be able to like distract yourself with things like your phone and social media, but at the end of the day, when that all goes away, like you're not really gonna be able to be complacent with yourself.
How would you say you found that internal peace, right? I think it's for someone who's like not so happy with himself and he feels a need to always be stimulated, whether it be scrolling on TikTok or spending time with people just for the sake of it, because he can't sit by himself for like 5 minutes. Would you say you've kind of developed that inner peace over time, or how have you found ways to access that side?
So I won't say that I'm not a victim of this overstimulation era that we're in, but I think over time I've tried to separate myself from it. If I ever find that I'm super bored, I'll go for a run and just being outside. This takes us back to our discussion of appreciating the little things. If you go outside and you're like ignoring it and you're like, oh, when can I go back home and get back on my phone? Then yeah, you're gonna be bored, and that's gonna be like you're gonna develop the mindset like, oh, I'm just gonna stay inside. But if you're able to go out and appreciate little things like the colors of the leaves changing in the fall or like the birds chirping, that to me is just as stimulating as social media. And
Maybe in a better way as well.
yeah, because it definitely is better because online a lot of it is like useless information that that you're gonna forget in 15 seconds. But if I go outside and I go for a walk or a run or walk my dog, like these things stick with me throughout the day. They change even if it's only for a day, they change my mindset. They they calm me. They make me feel like I was productive. Like if I sit on my phone all day, I get guilty because like, oh my God, I didn't do anything today. If I go outside and I walk my dog, it's like, oh, at least I was able to get outside and appreciate things. Yeah.
Just appreciate just being like being alive, right? Well, have you tried like lowering your screen time at all, like over the years, or
I have where I replace it with is music. So like I'm still using my phone, but I think even if it's just taking away the visual aspect of it and replacing it with art, music, um, I think it's I think it's I don't know how to put it into words, but to me it further amplifies those your appreciation. I love listening to music. Like on my phone, I'll like 5 hours a day on Spotify just from listening to music, and I don't really count that as being on my phone because I'm not. But again, like if I'm outside on a run, listening to music and trying to find music that matches my mood, or finding music that is in a mood that I want to be in, it'll help me get there. And then I can more easily appreciate the things around me and just be at peace with myself.
So when you mention music, do you feel like it's been a direct like when you say that it's helped you with like the screen time thing, right? Would you say that instead of when you have the desire to kind of scroll or go on Instagram or some shit, then you kind of replace that with the music piece that I'm just gonna listen to music right now, or like is that kind of directly correlated or was this kind of separate, would you say?
There was a moment in my head where I wanted to go on TikTok, and I was like, I've been on TikTok a lot today. What if instead I go do something else? I go do a chore, I clean my room, and I listen to music because 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 I've been and a lot of people have been on their phones for such a long time that like going cold turkey would be hard. Just like completely separating from your phone. Like I have my phone on me 24/7. Everyone has their phone on them 24/7. But being able to replace it with music, it's almost like a gradual shift. And to me, there's no negatives of just listening to music because you can get other things done. You can do chores, you can get your homework done, you can clean your room, you can walk your dog, you can go out and just do things with music. But with TikTok and other apps like that, like you don't really do anything else. You just get sucked in, and a lot of times I'll open up the app if I'm just like if there's just like a break in my day, and I'll only intend to be on it for 5 minutes, and then I'll look at the clock, and it'll have been like an hour, and then I'm like, I didn't do anything today. Like I just wasted so much time, and I'll never get that back, and I don't even remember anything I watched.
Yeah, I like the gradual shift piece that you talk about, right? That, going cold turkey, I don't think it's healthy to do because you'll set some huge ideal for yourself that, okay, let's say you have 4 hour screen time. I want to have a 1 hour screen time a day. Like, and then you'll fail and you'll be like, oh, this is too hard. I think some people do that where like they'll hear some podcast or they'll hear some motivating thing and they're like, oh yeah, I want to go cold turkey. I want to go all in. Like I want to start working at like 4 every morning, going on runs if they hear some motivational podcasts. But I think setting up smaller ideals for yourself and finding ways to make the transition enjoyable and less gradual. Like, people like to say that, oh, yeah, it's going to be hard. And yeah, it's going to be hard. But I think there's still ways to make it enjoyable along the way so that you're not just beating yourself up along the way, like every minute. Like, there's ways that when you set goals for yourself, you can set them, make them gradual over time. Because if you set something too big, it'll just paralyze you because you won't even know how to move toward the goal. But like setting up like the smaller things along the way, like even if it's just replacing some of that time with listening to music and doing a chore, like that's a huge step than just sitting there for an hour and scrolling on TikTok, right? So it's really important because it's really a part of our human nature now to be on our phone. Like it's so ingrained in our being, like picking up a phone and scrolling. Like it's just like I feel like there's a new circuit in the brain developed for that or some shit.
Yeah, I find it appropriate to compare the phone and especially social media directly to a drug because as I was saying, like social media and stuff, it releases chemicals in your brain that make you want to stay on and overstimulation and like keep using it and like that's all on purpose from the companies that make it. But when you vape or you smoke, especially nicotine, it's the same principle really. Like you're putting these chemicals that make your body feel a certain way and your body wants to keep feeling that way. And and whenever you hear about people quitting nicotine, like the advice is never I mean, it sometimes it is go cold turkey, but you hear about people like having withdrawals and they get really sick because their body has like adapted basically to these chemicals. And obviously going cold turkey from like a phone isn't going to have the same withdrawal effects. It's not going to make you physically sick, but mentally it's
But
going to mentally it's going to have a lot of detriments because if you just throw your phone away, like you are going to feel really bored because you haven't like gradually taught yourself how to appreciate things other than your phone. So being able to use your phone in other ways, such as music or like slowly lowering your screen time each day, you'll also slowly learn how to be happy doing other things and being on your phone rather than just putting it down and getting rid of it completely. Because then you're lost. Then you don't really know what to do.
Yeah, I think that there are so many benefits, right? When I deleted social media and everything, I lowered my screen time. Like I was able to do like everything you described. Like I feel like I relate to it so much that like I was able to enjoy small things more. I felt like my day was more full with texture instead of hour or two wasted per day scrolling. But definitely when I first did it, it was hard. Like I tried going cold turkey at first and I failed. So then I went back on the apps. Um, but I remember that when I first did it, I was like having headaches, and I was like, life is miserable all of a sudden. I don't have the will to live type stuff. But then like after 2 weeks, it goes away. Like, I mean, I think when I deleted Instagram, I re-downloaded the same day. And then you try again, you keep making slow progress, and you'll reach a point where it's like finally you feel free from being a slave to your phone, and the benefits are just there, man. Like, really hope people can figure that out and make those improvements, man.
Yeah, so I did the same thing, kind of. I no longer have TikTok. There would be some days where I'd spend like 10 hours there on TikTok, and it was,
10 hours, bro. Is that an exaggeration?
no, well, I mean, like, during like the school week, obviously not because I have other things that I have to do, but like on like a Sunday, like if I was doing anything, like I actually sit on my phone all day. Now the only social media that I I have Instagram. I only follow my friends, and it's just a private account, just to see like how they're doing. But the only one that I really use is YouTube. Um, I just don't. So like the overstimulation thing, you don't really find it as much on YouTube. It's not as big of an effect because those are all, for the most part, like scripted, planned out. What I watch is mostly it's like video essays, scripted and planned out. They're actual constructive content that like I'll be able to reflect on and apply to my life. And so like yeah, I haven't gotten cold turkey from social media, but I've gotten cold turkey from just the constant stimulation. I've been able to widen my attention span to be able to appreciate these people that make like longer, actually productive content. That yeah.
Yeah, no, I use YouTube as well. I don't have YouTube on my phone, but I do on my computer. And I think that if you're using it mindfully, YouTube is an amazing spot, right? Because, TikTok is a very different story because the videos are like 60 seconds long. It's like packed with like dopamine hits within the video, like this random music playing in the background and people just like yelling in your face. Like TikTok is was one place. YouTube Shorts can be like that as well. But at the same time, there are YouTube videos that are kind of mindless, useless shit. But there's so many YouTube videos that are educational, that they're longer form content, that with videos that like have no dopamine hits in them. There's like one person just talking to you and explaining concepts to you, and you're learning and actually improving your life from it. So I mean, I'm making videos on YouTube right now. Like I think that there are definitely mindful ways to use it, but you know, yeah, I'm happy that you've seen those changes as well with the TikTok. Like 10 hours is crazy, man. I mean, I feel like I've been in a similar zone probably a while back when I was like going into freshman year. That summer was pretty rough with COVID and everything. But yeah, man. Anything else gonna finish off with or
Um, no, that's it for me. Like, really touched on everything that's like in my brain. Yeah.
yeah, man. This podcast went in a couple different directions, man. Like we started with like wrestling, got into like world politics at some point, social media. It was a fun one though. I had a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, I mean, we started talking about like nukes and immortality, and then we went to like just being outside in nature. It's
Yeah, that's how it
crazy.
be though. That's how conversations be because I think that your mind just be going in so many different directions. That's one of the reasons I love conversations so much. Like they're so fluid. When you're just like kind of using your curiosity to guide your way through it, like it just goes in like serpentine ways.
Yeah, I mean, the human brain is so interesting. Just like random things that just like pop into your head that you just can't help but like bounce off other people and just like try to get other perspectives. And that's what I think podcasts are such a great form of media because because it's not like I mean obviously they're edited, but like it's not always it's not like obviously it's not like TikTok and it's even not like a lot of other YouTube videos because like I said those are scripted, but I think podcasts are the most natural and the most personal form of media because it's just a couple of people talking just spouting off whatever comes to them.
Yeah, man. Love it, bro. Thank you for coming down tonight. Really enjoyed this one. I might want to get you back sometime in the spring. But yeah, bro. Let's go do our Sunday things.
Yeah, thanks for
Peace,
having me.
bro.
I look forward to coming back.
If you enjoyed that episode with Oliver Goodman, then you're gonna love this episode right here. Make sure you hit that link and watch it now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.